Welcome back to Mork Unfiltered, folks, where authenticity beats transformation, and we strip away all the fluff to have real, raw conversations about what it really means to take the lead, grow, and reinvent yourself. Now, today's guest embodies that reinvention in the way that few of my guests do. Marques Ogden isn't just a former NFL offensive lineman. He's a man who's lived the highs of elite professional sports, built an 8-figure construction empire, and then lost it all. Bankruptcy, betrayal, the collapse of his identity, and a chapter most people would never recover from. At his lowest point, Marques found himself cleaning office buildings on the graveyard shift for a paltry $8 an hour, grappling with shame, regret, and the heavy burden of disappointment. But guess what? Out of darkness came clarity and an entirely new path forward. Now, a sought-after keynote speaker, best-selling author, and coach to Fortune 500 companies, Marques has rebuilt not just a career, but a purpose. His story challenges everything that we think about when we think about success, ego, failure, and resilience. And in this conversation, we're going to go deep into what it means to lose everything and why that might just be where true leadership begins. So if you're building, rebuilding, or questioning your own definition of success, this, folks, is the episode you do not want to miss. Marques, welcome to Mork Unfiltered.
How are you, Patrick? Thanks for having me on, my friend.
My first question kind of goes way back, because I was very curious and I wanted to hear it from you. But when you think of the NFL, playing professional sports, just how hard that is, how insanely competitive that is as well. And that's like the dream for so many kids in this country. You know, I have to ask you the question, why play professional sports? Why football? What was it that made pursuing that career initially so important to you?
So for me, Patrick, what was really big was my brother, Jonathan Ogden, was regarded as one of the best offensive linemen in college football. When I started playing football as a freshman in high school, I loved my brother. I still love my brother. I idolized my brother when I was a young athlete. So watching him play the game of football at such a high level for so long, I was just so encapsulated and just in a trance with the game. And my dad played football at the Howard University football, Bison institution. So for me, it was more about bloodline and in honesty, right, Patrick, it was about building with my friends and being part of a community and being part of something that meant something and being part of a team. That was big for me because growing up, I was not very popular with the girls. I was very awkward at times. I was very smart. I was very educational savvy. But when my parents divorced, right, Patrick, I kind of became secluded and I kind of just didn't engage people like I did before that. So I was really struggling to find my identity. I was struggling to find my purpose. And I was just struggling to make friends because I was just mad all the time, confused a lot, angry a lot. So when football came around, it gave me an outlet. I got to do what my brother did, which was amazing. I got to be around friends, which was fantastic. And then I saw the pure intensity, competitiveness, and the physicality of football fit my size. It fit what I was going through. It fit, what I needed as an outlet. And it just seemed like a perfect fit. And so that's what I did. I started playing football as a freshman at St. John's College High School. And I played freshman, sophomore JV. I then went to varsity as a junior and senior. And then very luckily, right, Patrick, near the end of my recruiting process, Howard University came to my home. My head coach, Steve Wilson, sat down at our dining room table and told my mother and father, we're prepared to offer Marques a full 5-year scholarship to come to Howard University and play for the Bison. And all of our coaches believe with hard work, dedication, he'll be a starter by his redshirt freshman year. And we believe he will be the first offensive lineman ever drafted from Howard to the National Football League. And I thought, Patrick, they were insane. I'm like, NFL, I've got no offers on the table. I mean, this is authentic. This is real. Nobody's even sent me a freaking letter. Nobody's even said, hey, come to my school for a free visit or in a walk. The only other school, Patrick, that talked to me was Maryland because they knew my actual grade. Because what happened is my transcripts got messed up. So everybody thought I was a junior when I was really a senior. So that threw off the recruiting process. But again, Maryland knew it. So did Howard. And Maryland said, well, he's not going to go to Howard. That's 1AA. He's going to come to a 1A program, ACC, big time college football. And so they gave me a walk-on opportunity. I said, I'm not walking on at Maryland because you all were not very good at the time. So by the grace, right, Patrick, I got that full scholarship offer from Howard, and I went to Howard University, and that's where I played my college football.
Nice. Yeah, it's like, it's kind of a dream come true, right? I mean, my son played, high level. He was an athlete for 12 years, played competitive basketball. And then, one day was like, hey, I don't want to continue to play college level sports. And it's I don't think people realize just how hard it is to do what you did, right? To play as a kid, to play through college, to get into the NFL. I mean, for so many people, that is like the dream come true. And I remember that moment in your book where you talk about, signing on, right, becoming an NFL player. And I think you signed, if I'm not mistaken, you signed like a 3-year $1 million contract with an $80,000 sign-on bonus. Mm-hmm. And you felt kind of like you made it. Walk us back to that moment. How did that moment feel? And then, of course, when you look back on that today with hindsight, how do you see that moment as like a pivotal part of your career?
So at the time, Patrick, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I thought it was the holy grail of moments. Here I am. I'm 22 years old. I've got $80K in my pocket. I've signed a 3-year deal with an NFL team, and I've been drafted into the National Football League from the Howard University Bison. You couldn't tell me anything. I was on cloud 9. I was soaring. I was like, wow, I have made it. This is amazing. And what I realize now, Patrick, is that in reality, that moment was just a part of the journey. It was just a stepping stone to life after football. I tell kids all the time, being an athlete, I don't care who you are. You can be Tom Brady at some point, as long as you're blessed by God to live beyond playing, you will become an ex-athlete. And here's the question I have for you. When you become an ex-athlete, what's next? What's the next step? What's the next part of the journey? That's why I feel, unfortunately, so many athletes, I can only speak for NFL, that NFL players struggle with life after financially, purpose-wise, who are they wise, identity-wise. And Patrick, that's a big, big thing. And unfortunately, there's so much going on for guys, like they get targeted and they get married and get divorced, or have, kids with women, or they get targeted by like financial people and they get their money taken from them, or bad business deals. I mean, so much, man. And so I try to tell guys, what is it? Where does your passion and purpose align? And what is your mission? Your mission is the cause you are trying to solve. It is an emotion-driven perspective. And then when you have the mission, what's the plan? How are you going to execute? How are you going to take that thought or that cause you want to solve? That's not enough. You have to actually implement, take action. Again, right, Patrick, our podcast, Get Authentic, is doing very well. Like, one of my missions, right, or one of our dreams is to be the #1 podcast in the world. That's a dream, right? That's emotion, right? But the system, how are you going to get there? Right? I listened to an audiobook by Patrick Bet-David. Having a dream without a system is not enough. The dream will never come to fruition. So for us, right, Patrick, we record Tuesdays, Thursdays. We put out episodes Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. We are asking people to take the shorts and put it on their social. We're putting money into marketing. You know, Tara, who you know, that's how I met you. We hired Tara. Tara has been phenomenal in helping us with outreach and strategy. And so now we're building a system to make that dream a reality. So I feel, right, Patrick, looking back on that moment, it was just a part of the journey. That's all it was. And it helped me now because having the NFL logo shield attached to our name is always great. But like I tell people, that's not all we are, right? We talk, there's so much more to our brand, who we are, what we do, but that was a big part, right, Patrick, of allowing us to go through all the hardship, go through all the dark days, go through all the loss, go through, bankruptcy, no money, just struggling, just barely hanging on. The NFL helped us to be able to have the fortitude, grit, and resilience to keep going. I heard you say it. Most people would not have made it because most people aren't set up for resilience and bounce back.
Bingo.
But because of the NFL,
yeah,
I was.
Totally. And, that's an interesting part of your story. And, it's kind of like when I talk about it in my own book, and I talk about it when I do stage work as well, is, you get this feeling that people in society today want success immediately. And most people are not willing to work for it, and they're not willing to do really hard things to get there, right? And so because you eventually move on from the NFL, right? You played for Jacksonville, you played for the Titans, you had some personal things happen in your life, which we're going to get back to because it's hugely important about your story around purpose. I want to get back to that, but I want to leave that for later. And then you decide at at some point in your career that the football thing is no longer working for you. And that the love and the fun is gone, and that you got to move on and you get into the business world. And so I think what will be interesting for our audience to hear, and I want to ask you this question because, I look at what's happening in the world of technology today, Marques, and I really worry. And I worry because artificial intelligence, man, this technological tsunami is so much bigger than most people realize. And it is going to displace so many people. And so many people are going to lose their jobs. And as you know, when you left the NFL, when you left football, all of a sudden you have to rebuild your identity. So walk us through a little bit that process, right? When you leave football, you get into business, you're starting from scratch. You've never been a business person before. You've never been in construction before. How do you actually make a pivot that gigantic? Because most people have no idea how, and they're terrified of doing something like that.
So what I did, Patrick, first thing I did, and it actually was the wrong thing, but I'm going to tell you again, it can be the right thing if done correctly. I found a partner, a business partner that knew the operational side of construction. Now, or so I thought, but in reality, my partner knew residential construction, not commercial. So that was my era. But again, if you're listening, first thing, right? What is it? Where is the need, right? What's missing? So I went to an event at Morgan State, and Congressman Elijah Cummings, God rest his soul, talked about that there's a need for minority contractors in the city of Baltimore that can not only sit at the table with non-minority general contractors, but also at some point can create their own table with all contractors. And so going to that event, that touched me. And then Congressman Elijah Cummings said, "How you doing today, Marcus?" At the end, I'm like, "Wow, you know who I am?" I said, "Yes, you're in Ogden. We're in Baltimore. Of course I know who you are." And so he said, "I'm glad you're here because you have what it takes from the charisma, communication side to set this up." And he knew I had a partner. And so that's what we did. And we started small. We really did a fantastic job as a demolition, concrete contractor, small in Baltimore City. But unfortunately, what happened, Patrick, is when my mentor went out of business, that opened up a huge hole, and we shifted from concrete and demo to earthwork and stone and grading and hauling and semi-erosion control and utilities. That was the beginning of the mistake for us, because here's the thing, right, Patrick? We made a ton of money, but everything had to work perfectly to stay on top. And you and I both know that's not real. That's not going to happen. But by the time I realized we were in over our head, we were already bonded on jobs. We already had my home up as collateral, all of my assets. We had $1 million bank line. We had $1 million equipment line. Like, we were literally just like, we were too far in. So what happened is, right, Patrick, is we got into something, and I tell people all of the time, please remember this. Whatever business you get into, please have proper funding, not just for the good days, but for the bad. We had enough funding, Patrick, for the good days, but we didn't have the funding for the bad. So when the bad happened, we exhausted every financial resource. The bank line, over $1 million, 1.5, tapped out, gone. Equipment line, tapped out, gone. Credit cards, tapped out, gone. We had nothing left to leverage. So what we do? Went to a loan shark, leveraged my home, leveraged the equity in my home, leveraged everything. And we paid them back the first time. Second time, we couldn't pay them back. And when the developer denied our change order on a large job for about a $3 million change order that we thought was going to get paid back to us by our billion-dollar a year, multi-billion-dollar a year earning general contractor, when we didn't get paid back, Patrick, and the lines of credit was tapped out, we ended up waiting for our bank to decide our fate. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. When you own a business and you're at the mercy of your bank to keep you alive, that is the most horrible place to be in. It is absolutely horrifying. And then December 23rd, 2012, the bank called me about 8 o'clock at night, said, Marques, we've been meeting for 5 hours to discuss keeping Caden alive by giving you another $1 million of credit or shutting you down. And it was a vote of 6-5. We're shutting Caden down. And we're going to come after everything you own starting in January of 2013. I hope you have a happy holiday. And that, my friend, was the beginning of me learning, wow, business is something I tell people, get into it, but understand, if you don't know the business, if you're not prepared for the business, it could be your demise.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you went through a period after that, which again is in your book, where describe a little bit, like, how bad did it get? I mean, you hit, people think about rock bottom. They see the stuff in the movies. They read articles or blog posts. They see Instagram, posts, but just how bad did this get?
So, Patrick, when I left Baltimore, right, and we got down to Raleigh, North Carolina, $400 is all that I had left. The home in Baltimore was foreclosed on. When we got to Raleigh, we had both cars repossessed in the same day within a week of getting to Raleigh. We had no credit cards. We had I had no friends. I mean, everybody basically turned their back on me. My fiance, who became my wife, my ex-wife, her family was supportive, but nobody gave money, which I never asked for that. The NFL helped me to get a job at Merrill Lynch, but without them, it would have got even worse. But here's the thing. I didn't get paid for like 6 weeks. So for us, Patrick, it was absolutely horrifying. We had to eat out of food pantries. We had no lines of credit. We would spend like $50 to feed 3 people for 2 weeks. And we ate all the things you could think of bad. We had literally, Patrick, we were just hanging on. It was every single night was a sleepless night. That's why our first book is called Sleepless Nights. And we literally just hung on in survival mode. And then I got my job at Merrill Lynch. Then I got fired from that job after about 2 months. Went to a construction company the next day after getting fired from Merrill Lynch. Got fired from that job 5 days later. Fired twice in the same week. So Patrick, it was literally every single night was looking at bills, looking at this, what gets paid, what doesn't get paid, and that whole time, Patrick, I'm exposed to over $5.5 million of debt from the bankruptcy, from the business Caden failure, because I was so broke, I couldn't even pay for my bankruptcy attorney to file. It was $3,300 to pay for that. And Patrick, it took me almost 8 months to pay that off.
God.
8 months.
I mean, what is the mindset that you have to adopt to get through something like that? Because, the reality is I tell people as well, right? I tell my clients, I tell other people, I work a lot with entrepreneurs and founders, and everybody goes through tough times, right? Like, struggle is part of the human condition. And I believe that struggle is what makes us ultimately the best version of ourselves. But when you're in that struggle, what did you tell yourself to keep going? What frameworks, tools, tricks, faith, I don't know, meditation, sports, like what was it that helped you push through?
So I'll tell you this, Patrick, until September of 2013, it was just every day blaming somebody else, and I didn't face the reality. So from April 2013 to September 2013, I was victim mode. My mindset didn't even really exist. It was just go through life and blame others. What happened is when I had my rock bottom moment on the graveyard shift as a custodian, I realized at that moment that I was the one that put myself here. So what I did was I said, I don't like where I'm at, and I have to change it. So I really mastered visualizing, or quote unquote visioning. And that's what got me through. I said, I don't like where I'm at now, but it doesn't mean I have to stay here. And every day, right, Patch, I'll think of one thing I'm grateful for. My health, waking up, a friend, whatever the case may be, a client, whatever. I just practice that every single day. Right? Because I was trying to start speaking at that time, and I didn't get a paid job for 2.5 years. So again, once I was in the position of acceptance, instead of just acknowledging about my failure, I said, nope, you put yourself here. Then I said, okay, to get out of this, right, Patrick, I've got to visualize, right? Because I tell people all the time, your body may not be where you want it to be, but there's no limits to where you can take your mind to get yourself in a better train of thought. So again, if you're living somewhere that you don't want to live, that's where your body is. But your mind can think about a great place, vacationing, a great opportunity, a new place, a new existence, a better life. Your mind has no limits unless you put limits on your mind. And that's what happened. I stopped putting limits on my mind, Patrick, and every day I say, I don't like where I'm at. Let's think about somewhere else. And that kept fueling me because again, right, Patrick, it goes back to my mission. My mission is to help people succeed where I failed so they don't become the 2012, 2013 version of Marcus, because I want people to have the best life possible and fast track, quote unquote, to their success by avoiding the pitfalls that I went through. Because I want people to have freedom of time, freedom of life, freedom of choice, freedom to do whatever they want to do. But that's the mission. That's the cause I'm trying to solve with the work I do every single day.
I want to dig a little bit deeper on that because it's really interesting, right? So you talk about mission, this sense of purpose, this sense of helping other people avoid the mistakes that you made, right? Why is that so important to you?
Patrick, people are going to make mistakes in life. That happens. But what I don't want is the type of catastrophic mistakes that I made. Losing all of your money, losing your home, losing your cars, losing your friends, family looking at you differently. Everybody's going to make mistakes. I can't keep you from making mistakes that I hope are just minor things. I can't do that. But what I'm hoping happens, right, Patrick, is that they don't make the monumental, earth-shattering mistakes that most people do not come back from. Because most people wouldn't have the resilience to come back from $5.5 million of debt, losing your home, losing your cars, losing all your money, having no resources, having no way of doing it. Most people would not be able to bounce back. So my mission is to help people really not make those monumental, earth-shattering mistakes that can cause a lot more harm, not just from what you lose, but a lot of times can cause harm to your health, your mental health, your how you view yourself, and it can take you down some really dark roads. Again, I've been on some real dark roads, like not wanting to live, excessive drinking. Yeah, I've been on some real dark roads because of my business failure with Caden, and I'm hoping that people do not go in that direction like I went.
And why? Because you made an interesting pivot afterwards, right? So you have this rock bottom moment. It's like after you were cleaning out some garbages and there was like some bad milk or something, and then you just broke down on the sidewalk, I think it was on the curb, and you like started crying, right? And I think that's maybe where you started to really internalize and accept responsibility, right? As opposed to blaming others, like you said you were doing earlier. Why become a speaker? Like, because, people make all sorts of career pivots, and sometimes the career pivots are very obvious, but sometimes they're not so obvious. Why speaking, and what led you to the road that like speaking is like the thing that I'm going to focus all my hours on, the 95 hours a week that supposedly you worked, which is crazy, right? And then going 2 years without a paid speaking gig, right? Why speaking?
So it was 2.5 years, not one paid job. And what happened is I heard a podcast with Tony Robbins, and Tony talked about helping people find their greatness, helping people find their power, regain their power. And I said, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to help others not feel like this. I want to help others avoid this spoiled milk moment. I want to help others hopefully not go through sitting on a curb crying and saying, what in the heck has happened to me and my life? And a year ago, I'm on top of the world with an 8-figure business. Now I'm sitting here on the curb, broke, no money, no friends, no limelight, no articles. And I'm just sitting here as a complete bust in the business world. That, my friend, is what really got me inspired, because I was like, this is not about me. It's about helping people get out of their own way. Because what took me down, right, Patrick, was my ego. My ego took me down to the ground. I was making so much money, having so much success, having so much notoriety. I didn't know how to handle it. And today, right, Patrick, I'm very humble. If you say we do great, I'm like, thank you. If you're going to do a podcast, I'm there. Hey, I'm going to be, whatever people need to do, I'm all in. Because now I understand the meaning of humility, humbleness, grace, all those things. When I had Caden, I was thinking all that money, I didn't know what that meant. because for so long, I was always being told what to do as a football player. Being coached was just part of the process, but I was being coached, told what to do, where to be, all which is fine. But when I had a little bit of money and a little taste of success, and I was like, I can write my own ticket. Oh man, you can't tell me what to do now. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna go do that. I'm this big one. I'm this back party, and I became my own worst enemy.
So is it fair to say, Marques, when I listen to you speak, right? When I listen to what you just said there, is it fair to say that rapid success kills?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Rapid success kills if you don't have people like Patrick or myself or coaches or mentors to keep you in line. What happened, I'm not going to blame my father, God rest his soul, but I always tell people if my father was alive when I had the success of Caden, I'd still be in construction today. Because my father would say, Mark, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you thinking? But again, God took my father home, and I love my dad. And, was an amazing person. But honestly, if he was here, who I am today wouldn't be. Because even though I would have had success in construction, I would have just did what I needed to get him off my back. Right? I would have been real with him. I'm like, oh, sure, Dad. I know. So again, he'd have kept me in line, and I would have kept the business going. But who I am today, as a humble person, humility, if our podcast, right, Pat, becomes number one in the world, people know it all over, I'm still going to be the same guy doing podcasts like this. I'm going to coach people. You're going to be able to communicate with me. You're going to be able to find me. I'm going to still go and do things. I'm going to go with my girlfriend and enjoy life. And I'm not going to become simple and it's like castle on a hill, or act like I don't know anybody, because that's not who I am. I'm a person that loves to help people, and I love to be around people, and I just love people in general. So I mean, that's how it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you were talking about Tony Robbins, right? I don't know if you can see this, but there you go, man. I went in October, UPW. But Tony Robbins says something that he talks about it all the time in his books, and I think what you just said there really resonates with me, and it's the same reason that I do what I do, right? Is the secret to living is giving. Right. And most people in our society are just like all about themselves. It's all about me, my money, my fame, my car, my house. Right. And it seems that that's something that you discovered in your process. And that was probably one of the reasons why you decide you're going to go out there and kind of like manifest all your experience and share that on the stage. Tell us a little bit about, one of the things that I thought was interesting in your book was, that first speech where you get like this standing ovation, and it feels great in the moment, but then all of a sudden you get some feedback that kind of changes that. Tell us a little bit about what happened there.
So what happened was I ended up speaking for a client, and I got some standing ovation from a couple of my, like Boys and Girls Club, sports teams. That was kind of in my wheelhouse. And I ended up speaking. My first Fortune 500 client, not paid, was NetApp. And my good friend, Dave Nisvisky, who I coached both his boys in football, his son, Aiden, is getting married here shortly. His son, Alex, is already married. They're living their life. They're phenomenal young men. And Dave worked for NetApp. And so he hired me to come and speak for them. He took care of flight, hotel, no fee. I spoke for them at Mike Ditka's Steakhouse in downtown Chicago. And I remember speaking and all that type of stuff, and got a decent little clap here or there, nothing substantial. And I remember having lunch with Dave that following week. And he said, Marcus, how do you think the talk went? I said, oh, Dave, I thought it went awesome. And I talked about football a little bit. I talked about my business and this, that, and the other. It was amazing. I was great. He said, Marcus, did anybody come up to you and tell you were great? No. Did you get a real big standing ovation after you were done? No. Well, then here's the thing, right, Marcus? Great energy, great passion, wrong topic. What do you mean, Dave? You were speaking to doctors, nurses, healthcare providers. We want to know about football. That part, the concussions, the journey, you kind of just skimmed over that. and you dive into your business and your failure and your bounce back. The bounce back is nice, but we want it more on the football side. That's the audience. I said, oh. He said, Marques, I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to hire you to get our CXO dinner in Miami, and same group, same audience type. What are you going to do? Spoke for him 6 months later, crushed it, got my first Fortune 500 testimonial letter, off to the races. If you want to be a speaker, it's not about what you want to say up on that stage or on that computer. It's about what the client's need is tied into their theme. If you can't take your mission, so one of our big missions in speaking, right, Patrick? Thrive through the eye of the storm. Move like a bison. A bison is the only animal that charges directly into the eye of the storm. The only animal. And I'm a Howard University Bison graduate, which is awesome. So again, here is that whole process. When I speak, when we do work for clients, it's not just about hop out the eye of the storm. That's our overlining theme, but we tie it back to your theme, your mantra, your mission, how to, thrive in the insurance industry, how to excel at sales in the finance industry. And we tie it in and we bring in the Bison acronym and we tie it back to your theme, your event, what you're wanting to get done and what you want your audience to walk away with. But we always tell stories because stories are going to keep people hanging on their seat to listen to the action steps that you're going to teach. But the stories draw them in, get emotion, and then give them that logic.
Right. Makes perfect sense. And so what was the major takeaway as you continued speaking? How did your speaking, career and how did your way of preparing evolve from that compared to what you had been doing earlier?
I learned the importance, Patrick, of pre-con calls with clients to get a clear understanding of the theme, what they're focusing on, and how they want the message to tie back to their theme. And that's what's helped us now speak for over 80 Fortune 500 clients in the last, 7 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And one of the things that, that comes out of your book in the success cycle, which you talk about as well, right, is you talk a lot about the importance of asking for help, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like when you look at your life and your story and your, all your pivots, how important was asking for help and where did you get help?
Asking for help is the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur because you don't know everything. So I'm very good at speaking. I'm very good at coaching people, interviewing people, going on podcasts, doing media. That I can do. I stink at how to set up a website. I suck at how to create a marketing strategy. I stink at writing for newsletters, blogs. I can't take photos of myself other than little selfies, right? But everything I stink at, I have an expert in that area. George, website. Dawn, internal manager. Tara, marketing. Donovan, videography. That's the key. And what I learned is once I stopped having an ego, trying to think I can do everything, that I'm supposed to do everything, that's when I said, you know what, Marques, get the heck out of your own way and allow people that have expertise to come in that, again, ladies and gentlemen, find people that can see themselves as part of your vision. That's huge. When you do that, that means you all are aligned. When alignment happens, magic happens. Plain and simple. So you gotta learn that piece. And that's what I did. That's what we did. And as a result of that, right, Patrick, that's when things got better. So when I stopped trying to be Superman, because I had Dawn for a while and she was awesome. But when Dawn and I both realized, wow, Marques, I can't do the website and the videos and the photos and the content and the social media and the outreach. I just can't do it. We started to slowly build our team. And as we start to do that, right, Patrick, that's when things start to really go to the next level.
Now, obviously, I agree with you 100%. In my book, I have a whole chapter on where I talk about building teams. What advice would you give for entrepreneurs or people getting started who don't potentially have the money to hire people? It's like we all have these weaknesses, right? And we want to get people to help us. It's like, oh my God, I suck at copy, or I suck at running digital ads, or I'm a lousy email marketer. How do you find help when you don't have the resource, man?
You gotta do like we did in the old days, right? Trade. That's what I did. Trade services with people. You have expertise in something. And if you can find that, that's when it goes to the next level. So I tell people all the time, please learn to trade services. Learn how to barter. If you have something you're good at, by God, trade with that person, align with that person, and that's going to take you to the next level.
Got it. So look for something where they have a weakness that potentially you can compliment them on. And so, for example, if you're a coach and they're struggling with their business, maybe you can give them some free business coaching hours. Or, if you're a website designer, you could say, hey, look, I'll design parts of your website. So barter and trade. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Because Patrick, that's what we did. And again, like when I first brought on George, I didn't have the money, so we trade. I coached George for a little bit. He helped me for free. Once I could afford it and I could pay him, I then started paying George to be my website guy. And that's how it all started out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you got to have the humility to ask for help and know you need it on the one hand. And then you also got to have the foresight, and kind of a little bit of the entrepreneurial zest, right, to go out and do these kind of trade, these barter deals. Okay. I want to switch gears for a second because I think there was another thing that came up that was interesting in your book, which I wanted to talk about because I think it's so prevalent in society today. The comparison trap, right? Like at one point, you make allusion to the fact that the only person that you should be comparing yourself to is yourself, right? It's the person that's kind of like standing in the mirror when you get up in the morning or where you go to sleep at night. Tell us a little bit more where that comes from for you. And I'm also curious about, did you have a tendency, particularly when you were younger, to compare yourself to others and what that meant for you?
So for me, you can't be anybody but you. And so I played the comparison game a lot with my brother, comparing myself to him and what he was doing. But then when I realized I'm 6'6", he's 6'9", how he plays the game was totally different than how I played the game, and stopped comparing myself to him, things got better for me. When I started in the speaking business, I started comparing myself to other speakers like, oh, I see them on social media doing this. They get this job. They got that job, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, Marcus, if you're going to sit here and compare yourself all day long, you're never going to hit your full stride. So again, my recommendation to people, worry about you, control you, because at the end of the day, that's all you can do. And if you can focus on you and control you, that's it. And don't worry about other people. Don't get into the social media game. Don't look at people's posts, what they're doing. Don't focus on that. Focus on you, your skill set, and what you can do to help you get where you need to go.
It's an interesting dilemma, right? Because on the one hand, we're telling ourselves not to compare ourselves to others, right? We're telling ourselves in a way not to compare ourselves to what we're seeing on social media. And yet in many jobs these days, we have to spend a lot of time on social media, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you reconcile those two things?
So focus on putting out content that you need to for your business, and don't get caught up with other people that do what you do or in your industry, what they're doing. Take care of your stuff, take care of your mission, take care of your message and your clients and your mantra, and don't focus on other. Like for me, I post my content. I don't worry about what Inky Johnson's doing or Lewis Howes or all these other people. I think they're great, but I don't go and look at what they're posting on social, where are they speaking, I don't got time for all that. I respect their game. I respect how great they are and what they do, but I'm building our brand, our office, our setup, our team, our mission, our plan. Because at the end of the day, my friend, that's all we can focus on.
And when you think on your your legacy and your purpose and why you do what you do, I want you to fast forward for a second and visualize, as you were talking about earlier. Imagine that it's your 80th birthday, right? And you're surrounded by friends, family, your kids, wife, girlfriend, whatever. And they are all raising a glass to toast in your honor for the life that you've lived. What, Marques, would you like them to say about your life?
That Marques lived a life of servant leadership and excellent service to help others achieve their dreams, their aspirations, their desires. That's what I'm all about. That's who I am. Yeah, I've got coaching calls here in a minute with clients, right, Patrick? That's what I do. I want my clients to have more success, more fulfillment than I could ever imagine them having, because we've helped them with our experiences, our wisdom to get where they want to go. So I'm hopeful at my 80th birthday, that's what people saying about me and our legacy.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm going to finish with our lightning round of questions, which is 3 quick questions, 3 quick answers, then closing. One value you never compromise on.
Integrity.
One failure that you're grateful for.
Losing my construction company.
A powerful question you would like me to ask my next guest without knowing them.
What is one struggle that you've overcome with adversity? What is one struggle that you overcome with persistence, grit, and tenacity?
Awesome. Marques, thank you so much for showing up today with so much honesty and courage and humility, not just to share all your successes, but also to unpack the moments that really tested you as a person, tested you as a man, broke you down so that you could rise again to become the person that you are today. Your story is inspiring, man. It's a reminder that real leadership isn't just about perfection and image, but it's also about things much deeper, like resilience, humility, and a willingness to keep growing and ask for help. I'm super deeply grateful for your authenticity, all the lessons that you shared today, and I know that our listeners are going to walk away inspired, not just to chase success, but to define it for themselves in their own way, with purpose, humility, and heart. So thanks for being here, man. God bless.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, brother.